who doesn't like true crime? Almost every single person that I have talked to has some sort of interest in true crime, whether it be, documentary series, whether it be podcasts, or maybe like discussion groups, whatever. Most people have some sort of interest in true crime. And I don't blame them. I find it really interesting too. I'm a big fan of true crime documentaries and series and whatnot. But there is a certain aspect to true crime that kind of gets on my nerves. And it's not just the atrocious crimes that were committed. It's the fact that so many people can't distinguish reality from fantasy. And I know this is common sense, but apparently some people don't have common sense. So they don't understand that this happened in real life. Like, this event, this crime, it's not just for entertainment purposes. It actually happened to a person. It has affected a life and is continuing to affect communities, families, etc. I have met a lot of people that treat true crime as if it's like another movie or like another Netflix series that they're just going to binge watch and forget about. And I'm like, it actually happened. So let's break it down and let's take a look at a normal Netflix documentary series. Most of the time, it focuses on the crime and what happened. It also focuses on the psychological profile or the background of the perpetrator and interviews from people who were involved, like the victims' families. It could be the detectives that were, involved in the case. But one thing that they don't really cover is the focus or the information on the victims themselves. There's not a lot of information to the victims besides the fact that they're the victim of this crime. What I want to know about these people is, well, first of all, who were they? What did their dreams look like? What did their fears look like? What were their aspirations? Just like, what did their lives look like? That's what I want to know. And it's so disrespectful because they're treated as if their identities only serve the purpose of being the victim in this crime and not an actual person with dreams, hopes, aspirations, etc., etc. So let's think about it a different way. We remember a lot of different serial killer names, right? Like Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, the Zodiac Killer, Richard Ramirez. I mean, you get my point. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. What about their victims? Like, do we remember all their victims? The people that actually matter in this discussion? Once again, the focus is never on the victims. It's always on the person who did it. And this is really ironic because the people who actually need to be remembered are the victims, yet they're the ones that are being forgotten. And this attitude leads me to my second point, which is the glorification of the perpetrator. When true crime enthusiasts start focusing on the perpetrator instead of the victim, a large chunk of them, not all, but a large chunk, tend to sympathize, humanize, and glorify these horrible, vile people. And a lot of this is because of how they're portrayed in documentaries and social media and just like media in general. People watch a Netflix documentary series about a serial killer, for example, and they are painted in a somewhat positive light, or at least they are not being represented as the horrible, vile people that they were, and they're just portrayed as being this troubled person who had not a lot of support growing up, and they were, forced to go and kill and mutilate people, and then people are like, oh no, that's terrible. Oh, they're just human. They're just troubled. Or worse, they start to glorify them and treat them as if they're gods. And like, if we are making that comparison, they are not gods. They are the spawns of Satan, okay? You cannot tell me that Ted Bundy was a god. No. He was a sociopath or a psychopath, I'm not really sure. Maybe he was, I don't know. I really don't know, but like, he was not okay. And this is how a lot of copycat killers go about killing other people based off of their inspiration from these glorified serial killers. And what does that result in? More lives, more innocent lives being lost, and broken communities, devastated families. All for what? For nothing. And this has actually happened in real life. I guess the most infamous one being the Copycat Zodiac killer, who was Eddie Seta, if I'm not mistaken, and another person by the name of Derek Brown, and he was influenced by Jack the Ripper. Preposterous. Serial killers and perpetrators are not celebrities, but they're often treated as such. A lot of them even have like groupies and fandoms, and it's just like, I mean, for example, Richard Ramirez and Charles Manson had tons of women just being like, oh my god, marry me. And I'm like, he's the spawn of Satan. Like, he's just, what? I know a lot of us are attracted to, like, the bad boy, but, like, come the fuck on. And the worst part of this is that this influences people to commit these heinous crimes in order to become popular or to become famous like celebrities. And I'm like, do you really think that you want to become popular or like famous as like a murderer? But apparently some people do. I will never understand it, but I don't know. Here, I would like to talk about the new Dahmer series based on Jeffrey Dahmer's horrible, vile crimes that is now trending. It's a Netflix documentary drama series, and some people are losing it, and not in the way that you would expect. The amount of people thirsting over Jeffrey Dahmer just because Evan Peters is playing the part there's too many people. Listen, I love Evan Peters. I stan him. I want the best for him. I think he is a phenomenal actor, and like, I love him wholeheartedly. But even Evan Peters is not going to make me sympathize with one of the most vile creatures to have ever walked this planet. Once again, let's break it down. Evan Peters is hot. Jeffrey Dahmer is not. But also, why on earth did Netflix have to make this into a series? Don't get me wrong, I think that the cast is phenomenal, especially Evan Peters and Niecy Nash, but like, was a focused Netflix series about Jeffrey Dahmer really necessary? I don't really think so. Because it's basically re-traumatizing the families and the communities that were affected, who are still reeling in from the absurd amount of trauma that they had to face because of this one horrible monster. There are a couple of people that are like, oh, but more information, more awareness about Jeffrey Dahmer. And I'm like, okay, listen. Jeffrey Dahmer is one of the most famous or infamous serial killers on the, like, if you type serial killers into Google, the top, like, in the top 5 will be Jeffrey Dahmer. There's so much content about him. There's so much information about what he did, about his crimes, about his backstory. Like, we have gone over and over about Jeffrey Dahmer. Like, I think that it's time to give this a rest, but apparently Netflix didn't think so. I don't know. Just my thought process doesn't really understand. And even if they're not intentionally trying to glorify Jeffrey Dahmer, they are unintentionally helping people glorify Jeffrey Dahmer. Like, the tweets that I've seen, my god, I'm like, y'all need therapy. Like, I thought I needed therapy, but no, y'all need therapy. You're looking at Jeffrey Dahmer's mugshot and being like, oh my god, no, I can't know. Another thing that really pisses me off about this true crime fandom, and I hate that I have to call it a fandom, but it is what it is the fact that there's a lot of clout chasing. And it's surprising because you're like, what? Like, no, people don't do that. People do that. People treat true crime as the next trending topic or like the next trend that we have to do, and they don't really focus on the crime. Like, it's true crime for a reason. It's not just like a cute TikTok trend. It's like somebody actually got affected. They possibly died, or at least were heavily traumatized. A pretty good example of this is Elisa Lam. She was found dead in the Cecil Hotel back in 2016 or something like that. Basically, after her death, a lot of true crime content creators went to the Cecil Hotel and they were requesting the room that she stayed in. They were trying to see if they can get the water cooler, like the water towers, open again because that's where her body was discovered. And all of that was just so just out of, I'm like, do you not realize that somebody died? Like, do you, like, are you that out of touch? Like, I get that you're interested. I get that, you know, you have content to create. I get it, but I felt as if it was so just disrespectful. And I was like, is content the only thing that you care about? Like, is that the only thing? Like, using somebody's death or a very horrible, inhumane crime to gain popularity online is one of the most pathetic and atrocious things that I have ever seen in my entire life. And I've seen a couple of pretty atrocious and pathetic things. That one takes the cake. It's one thing to spread awareness, it's another to use it as entertainment. But overall, I think that true crime is actually a pretty interesting way to raise awareness about certain topics. And sometimes it really makes you think about certain things. For example, like, what are some precautions that we need to take? What are some things that we can stay safe and we can help other people stay safe? What are some signs to look out for? What can we do to prevent this from happening again? I feel like a lot of true crime content really kind of gets the ball rolling in this discussion, and it is incredibly, incredibly important. And certain true crime content even helps cold cases get solved, which is amazing. But unfortunately, a lot of the times it's done to create a shock value, which is both insensitive and disrespectful at times. Because once again, this is not fiction. It's real life. I know that it's easy to kind of get wrapped up in the whole true crime debate or the true crime discussion with people, and you might start with good intentions, but keep in mind that this is something that has happened or is happening to somebody or a community or a family. It's not just a Netflix documentary. It's not just a YouTube video. It's somebody's life. So I am going to leave this video here because that is all I have for this rant. And for those of you who are interested in respectable true crime content, definitely go check out Coffee House Crime because they do everything just exceptionally well. And speaking of Coffee House Crime, I am going to go binge watch a couple of videos. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!